Straight from the distillery, hot off the presses and right onto YouTube. This is the brand new Gold Spot whiskey, the 13-year-old Generations edition. Let me tell you about it in this week's review. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and like I said, this is the brand new Gold Spot, the 13-year-old Generations edition. So let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, first off, if you are aware of the Spot whiskey kind of brands, they've got the green spot, the blue spot, the red spot, the yellow spot. I'll put a picture of all the spots up there for you to see, but very nice, solid little whiskey brand. And they've recently enough, or at least like I think it was 2 years ago, they came out with this one right here, a special edition for their 135th anniversary, the 9-year-old Gold Spot. And that was, as far as everyone was aware, the only Gold Spot whiskey that was coming out. It was a special edition. This here was just released about, I think, a week ago now at this point. It's the Generations edition. It's their new one, and based on the way they're describing it, it seems as if the Gold Spot line is going to be their range for like special editions. Like no Gold Spot will probably be the same whiskey. They'll all be maybe a little bit different, all limited enough in numbers and all a little bit kind of special. These two are quite different. I mean, well, I'll probably do a video comparing the two Spot whiskeys, especially before I finish this bottle. But this one here was a 9-year-old, 51.4%, and it was aged partly in port casks. This one here though, a little bit different. Like I said, it's got that 13-year-old age statement. It does come in at 46%, so about 5.5% lower in ABV than the original kind of the first Gold Spot that came out. And it was aged in different casks. So it was aged like a classic Spot whiskey in bourbon casks and sherry casks before being given a 16-month finish in Reciota Della Valpollicella wine casks. Now, if you're not familiar with Reciota Della Valpollicella, it's a sweet wine from Italy. What they do is they kind of dry out the grapes so that some of the water evaporates but it leaves behind the sugar. And then when you make a wine from that, you get a really, really sweet wine. And so the whiskey was put into those sweet wine casks for 16 months. And the reason they're calling this the Generations edition is because apparently the Michelin Sun family, the kind of founders of the Spot whiskey, what they would do is they would get casks of wine, they would sell the wine, but then when they had that cask, they would go down to the distillery, fill up the cask with different whiskies and age the whiskey themselves and sell it under their own Spot whiskey brand. So they've been collaborating with vineyards for a long time, and this one here, I think they were collaborating with the Sperry family of the Secondo Marco vineyard in Italy for apparently 7 generations. So a bit of a history where they've been buying those wine casks from that company or from that vineyard, that family estate, and now they've decided to age one of their whiskies in those special wine casks. And I think that's kind of all there is to say about the whiskey. Let's go in for the nose on this brand new Gold Spot Generations. Okay, right off the bat, it's very sweet. It has got this really like strong like red wine and apple influence. If you imagine like a slice of red apple was almost soaked in red wine, and you've got that, it's not super winey, it's not super appley, it's kind of in between, and it's got this really nice but bright, vibrant red fruits, red, sweet apple, that kind of note immediately on the nose. Traditionally with a pot still whiskey, I'll get like white pepper, black pepper. I'll get those kind of deep, almost like spicy spices. I'm not really getting any of that here. Now, normally for me, like the green Spot whiskey, it's bourbon and sherry in at 40%. It's got bright green apple and cracked black pepper. Here, I've still got spices. I've got like a little bit of nutmeg and maybe some like cinnamon sticks, not like the ground up cinnamon powder, but like those, you know, the earthy cinnamon stick, the actual stick you get, like that kind of earthy, almost fragrant, floral, almost perfumed, that kind of flavor, that kind of note is coming through, as opposed to like a spicy black pepper note. But I mean, the real note, the real star of the show is that wine cask influence coming through. It is really apparent. It's kind of touching, it's got a wrapper around every other note, like around your appley note, around your kind of cinnamon, your nutmeg notes. There's obviously some like nice caramel, butterscotch, toffee notes coming through. Like again, like, you know, that kind of nice bourbon influence coming through there from those ex-bourbon casks. But again, it's wrapped up with that red wine influence coming through. So I think that's enough talking about the nose. I'm gonna go in for the palate. Cheers. It's soft but quite sweet. It's got this kind of like a really nice kind of medium body mouthfeel. It's not super syrupy. It's not like spreading out over my mouth, but at the same time it's not thin. It's like kind of in between. I mean, at 46% ABV, you're not going to get that heavy duty, like if it was like at 51, 55% ABV, you'd be getting this much more stronger mouthfeel. Like already I'm talking now, I can feel it's faded off. So the mouthfeel, it's not like viscous. It's not like some pot still whiskies where it can be almost oily. It's quite light and medium body, like still plenty of caramel, like a caramel apple, bit of toffee, a little bit of oak spice as well, complementing that those kind of like nutmeg, cinnamon notes I was getting, and again a lot of red wine, almost like red wine gummies, like those kind of like candied red wine notes. So I'm gonna go in again for another sip, see what I can find. Cheers. Yeah, so on the finish, I'm getting a little bit of those pot still spices, a little bit of those kind of black pepper notes coming up, but they're quite absent on the palate. The palate, much sweeter, much more, again, it's as if it's all been wrapped up in that red wine influence. Quite gummy, quite candied, quite sweet, a little bit of like raisins, a little bit of like almost like figs and plums, like those dried fruits, almost like that kind of dried notes where you get almost like a natural candy. You know, if you dry out a grape, you get a pretty sweet kind of little raisin. That's kind of what I'm getting here. It's nice. It's not super candied, but just quite nice, kind of almost like natural sweet flavors coming through there on the palate. But like I said, I got a bit of those pot still spices on the finish, so I'm going to go in again for the finish and see what that's like. Cheers. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I've got that nice apple note, got the nice kind of caramel toffee note coming up, all wrapped up in that red wine, red berries notes. The apple fades off, like it's a light enough note, fades off pretty quickly. The mouthfeel dissipates a little bit, but I'm almost getting like a little tingle on my tongue, kind of like almost if there was like a little bit of black pepper in there. It does come up a little bit as those other kind of rounder, richer, sugary notes fade off. Gives me that little bit of pot still spices that I'd be expecting to come from a pot still whiskey. Also, like the wine notes is hanging on as well. Like I'd say that wine, a little bit of tan, not really like tannins, more like the oak flavor. You know when you get those tannins and it can be almost like quite drying and your mouth can feel like the water's been sucked out of your cheeks. It's not like that. It's like the oak flavor, but not the oak tannins, if that makes sense. It's got a lot of that oak character coming through from the wine without being overly tannic there into the finish. Before I give my final thoughts on this whiskey, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews like this one every Wednesday, and I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday. So if you want to see more, make sure you're subscribed. But right now, as to my thoughts on this whiskey, I'm kind of between two minds. So I like it. It's a solid whiskey. It's a nice whiskey. The Spot whiskey brand, they're not really going to put out a dud. They're not going to say, oh, here's something, throw it out to the market, grand. So it's a good whiskey. However, they do charge a premium on this. This is a €150 bottle. That's quite expensive, especially for something that's at 46%. Now I know it's super limited edition. I know it's super collectible, or at least it would be collectible if you didn't open the bottle. And I know that for some people they're going to collect like the gold Spot range and they'll have this Spot whiskey collection. For me though, for a drinker, if I was going to use this as a drinker, I'd want it to be up at like that 51%, that 55%. That way I could enjoy it. And if I wanted to, I could temper it back down by that little bit, bring it down to 46 if I wanted to, but because it's starting at 46, it's kind of taking that choice away. So so it's not really like a special edition drinker like that gold Spot here. That sits in the bar there, and whenever we have a special occasion that we want to celebrate, we pour ourselves a little bit of that, and it's like a special edition whiskey. We just have a little sip of it from time to time. This one, it wouldn't be that, because it doesn't have, it's really nice, but it doesn't have that much, that bang of flavor. It doesn't have that hit of like higher ABV, and I think that's where connoisseurs are aiming these days. I mean, this is definitely being pitched at a super premium whiskey. Like The description on the back, if you read the tasting notes on the back here, they're quite flowery and they're pitching it as a really nice super premium whiskey. But for me, like for the whiskey drinkers I know, for the whiskey nerds I know, give us the ABV, give us that higher ABV, and let us really enjoy everything about the whiskey rather than like the marketing and the presentation about it. So for me, I just think it's a little bit too expensive for what it is. Now, granted, I've got the bottle, I'll share it out with my friends, we'll definitely enjoy it. Like I said, it's a nice whiskey, but if you are looking at it and you're saying to yourself, oh, do I want to buy it? Is it €150 in Ireland? Maybe by the time it reaches America, I know some stores jack up the price of certain whiskies that are limited edition. You might not be missing out on too much. I wouldn't have the FOMO, the fear of missing out. I wouldn't be really upset I didn't get this. If I was going to decide between a bottle of this or a bottle of Blue Spot, I'd choose the Blue Spot. I mean, Blue Spot is supposed to be about €80, so you can get 2 bottles of Blue Spot almost for the same price as this one. And with the Blue Spot, you get that cask strength. Yeah, this is 15%. It's 13 years old, but you know, it just doesn't have that ABV that to me justifies that higher price. But what do you think? Do you think that it's worth the price? Have you tried it? Will you not be trying it? Do you think that maybe a whiskey at this kind of ABV, at this kind of age statement, shouldn't be at that price? Either way, let me know down below. Like I said, it is still a nice whiskey, so I am going to enjoy it, but I'll see you next time. Sláinte.